my studio called Kumar, in a rural, in a forest area. Basically, the location is an hour and a half away from the city, and I have been staying there throughout the weekdays. So it's a sudden stark change in comparison to when you're living in the city. So as I started spending more time there, I started getting, I became more aware of all the what's around me, meaning, seasonal changes, how the sunlight falls, or, the different kind of plants and trees and their textures, also the little animals and insects that are right there in the vicinity. So I had a very broad context. I would say that I hadn't decided as to what I'm going to be exactly making when I reach Baroda. I didn't have fixed ideas about that. But even when before I went to Baroda, the monsoon season here had started from June onwards. So uh, something that had stuck with me was all these. Post the summer barrenness where everything is just dry, and with the initial rain showers, when you have these little shoots come up. So that was something that had stayed with me, and I kept it in mind that that's something that perhaps I would like to work with. And also, again, when I go to Baroda, see what's happening there, and uh, see if any of the plants or insects within the studio vicinity, if that's something that I would like to work with as well. So, other three things that I decided was that I'm only going to be making sculptural work. Uh, Before this residency, I was participating in markets and I was only making functional work. And I thought it comes at a good time for me to go into a different space and uh, give 200% of my attention focus to just making sculptural work. Also, to get out of the rut that uh, one has when they're in their comfort zone or in the studio. So that was the first thing, that's cultural work. Second was that I planned on working with, I wanted to scale up. So I decided that I'm going to make large works. How large, I didn't know at the time, but just that was the thought in mind. And the third being that since my studio is not located within the city, I have the advantage of building a wood kiln, and I did build a Joe Finch kiln. I haven't been able to fire it successfully yet. So that I am going to be using the wood kiln at Baroda was also pre-decided. So these were the three things that I decided. And I plan to take you through the weekly progress that happened. So there's like a fair timeline for all of you to see. So this was day one. Kanjan and Falguni had come to Ceramic Center to kickstart the residency. And to the left, there's Suraj and me, and it's just we were just checking out the clay that they had there. So based on my theme, the germination theme, this was the first work that I made. And I knew in my mind that, that it's a shoot coming off a seedling, and perhaps it's going to be a lot delicate for a medium like clay to handle. But in spite, I was so, like, I just had the urge to make this piece. And I'll say I didn't have high hopes as to whether it was even going to stay as is for the days to come. And I think in a week or two, while moving it, I ended up breaking it. So that was that. Then the next piece that I started working on was this small shoots. Usually it's a cluster of very small shoots. I don't have a name for that plant that come up and they're very tiny. And you can just see them. They're just starting to come right above the soil, and the leaves are yet to unfurl. So they're quite elongated, and the leaves are at the sides, all closed on the inside. And I thought, okay, that's an interesting form that I could just enlarge. And to the right, you can see that this was my first attempt. I wasn't happy with it, the way the proportions had turned out. So in week two, decided to redo it. So in the pictures, you can see the stage in progress, uh, how the form to the right was made. Initially, I thought that I'll make five of them, but since I had the measurements of the wood kin with me, had I made five of them, I would have completely occupied 50% of the kin, and I thought that makes no sense. I'd rather make some other work. So I just came down to making three of those. And while I was making them, I was placing them next to each other to see how they are growing together and what variations I can make, uh, or how different also they can be together, but at the same time complement each other. So in the image to your left, you can see that why I was not happy with the first attempt that I had of the form that I had made, whereas the latter three, I felt that while I was hand building it, the lines and the overall shape of it was in much better control, and it synced with what I had visualized it mentally. So the other thing that I did was that I used two clays to give it that marriage effect. And the other learning that I had with these forms, that since from the bases are quite smaller in their diameter. So as I was growing it vertically, they became narrower, and then again they opened up and the width sort of changed. So I had to ensure that gravitationally they are able to balance themselves and they don't sort of lean and topple over, something like that. This work I started in the third week, again taking off the shoot in a pod idea. And here I am to the left, sort of making textures on the outside skin. And if you see to the image to the right, the shoots are quite in the center, meaning that they're not leaning onto either of the sides. Then came almost end of third week, and I had this idea from back in my studio space, where the locals who live there, they are called Katkari in Marathi. It means forest people. And I had this memory of a boy there who had climbed up this palm tree that was there, and it had stuck with me. And then when I was in Baroda, I constantly would see a lot of langurs around, and I thought perhaps a composition where there are a few palm trees and one boy up on one end of the palm tree, and on the exact opposite of it, if there's a monkey on top, and if both are just exchanging a look, that there's some humor in it, that they're doing it up on the tree and not on the ground. So this is, of course, the work in progress pictures. In this one, I had started attaching the leaves to the top of the trunks itself, and it was, of course, quite time consuming to get it. I mean, it took a lot of time to keep on attaching onto each other. And as I was making it, I was also sort of thinking that is this piece as it dries really going to sustain itself, because the weight at the top started becoming heavier. And as I had that thought few days after, uh, I had attached the monkey to it, and I think I was working on the boy form. I don't have a picture of that, but somehow just a little nudge while moving it, and it all fell down. And what I could salvage from it is to the image that you see in the left. Uh, I only could save that one palm tree. Uh, while I was making those leaf forms, I thought that also as a form itself is very interesting. And this is me making the leaves. So I would take like two cutouts of the leaf form and join them. Again, this component of that complicated piece would also take a lot more time. And since sadly that piece broke, I was quite determined to again redo it, because I really had attached myself to that idea. And when I started redoing it, the change that I made is that I did not attach the foliage on top of the trunks. So what I did is that I made those leaves as separate pieces, and I would keep checking if it fits onto the uh, top of the trunk. And that sort of made it easier for the piece to survive, I would say. Uh, this is almost 4 weeks into the residency, and at the end of this, we did have a high tea that Ceramic Center had organized with the local artists in Baroda. So we had all the ceramic people from MSU and other practicing artists come with us and interact with us and share their input or perspective as to about the work that we had been making. Sadly, I don't have pictures of those because I didn't click them in my camera. So I would say that because I spent so much of my third and fourth week on the same piece, there was quite some pressure of time because at the same time we were told that we are to have our open studio day on the 25th of September, which meant that I barely had 3.5 weeks left to complete my rest of the load in the woodkin. So before this, I mean, I had kind of completed only 50% of the kin load. And so constantly I would have that pressure in my head as to now I need to speed up and finish the rest of the 50%. So to the left are again those leaf compositions. What would happen with those is that while I had them covered in plastic and everything, as I would leave them to slowly dry and become bone dry, even with just a slight movement of the plastic, somehow the leaf on
Mm.
which the weight is bearing itself, they would just break or they would come off. And that made me realize, okay, that now again I have to redo these leaves, which was again additional work that I did not plan for. And because this piece was quite intense and complicated with so many components, I made this piece in the middle, which is a composition of leaves, which was just relaxing and sort of a little self assuring that, okay, I'll be able to make pieces sooner in the remainder of the time. And to the right is this form of tree that I had in mind, and I'd started working on it by making a trunk. But I moved on to the next idea, and this was again left in the plastic wrapped, and I kind of forgot about it. Then coming to the end of fifth week, I started working on this new idea where this composition has these leaves and the frogs are just chilling there, and uh, this frog here, he's completely at home and having a banter with this other one, and the third one is just probably eavesdropping and is just there without these two not knowing that this third person's presence is there. Just some sort of story playing in my mind, and I had that executed. Then I moved on to this piece where an enlarged snake is just hanging around in the branches of trees. So I kind of wanted to change just the proportions. Usually snakes are much, much smaller, but like imagine a bed and a snake is resting. So that was the idea that I had, that is just hanging around in the branches of these trees, which means that it was a really big snake. I would have, had it not been for the constraint of time, I would have loved to spend more time detailing this, but uh, I left it at this stage. And I mean, I did want the snake to be pleasant. I feel snakes are, a lot of people are afraid of snakes, but somehow I just didn't want that uh, to come across in with this expression. And this was almost 10 days left for bisque firing, and this was the piece again that I was working on. Again, the enlarged palms of trees, and I just somehow liked that form, and I just wanted to keep working on it again. And this was the last piece that I made. I suddenly remembered that I've kept a trunk midway covered in plastic, and I took that out, and then that morning itself, spontaneously, I had this idea of, okay, langur sitting on it, with a bit of human sort of body language. Like this one for me is a female who's just sitting, and perhaps they are bored and there are no trees around, something like that, but they're just waiting for something and they don't know what to do anymore. That was the idea behind it. Then came the bisque firing part. I would say almost 70% of it went well. Like the ones to the left, these fired, like there were no breakages in this. But what I was talking about, the Neriage effect that I wanted, that seemed evident in the bisque firing. Sadly, this piece, the monkey and the boy piece, in the bisque firing, the monkey and the palm, that particular trunk had fallen onto the kin floor and it was all in fragments, which again meant that I had to redo now this left side trunk. Then moving on to the glazing part. So when I'm back at home, I usually use a brush and hand paint. I use a lot of slips too. But the spray gun is something that I used over there, and I think that is very convenient for complicated forms like these to glaze with. Uh, Suraj was also going to do a wood firing. So we had just chosen these handful of slips and glaze recipes to work with. So all we knew is that one is going to be blue, one is going to be green, one is going to be a flashing slip. So there was no uh, idea as such as to how it's going to really look once it's out of the kiln, because there was no glaze reference, like there was no bank of glaze tests that were already done. We'd gone through the books over there and we just chosen a few of the recipes that we thought we would like to work with. Then comes to the loading part. Now, of course, if you make big pieces, to maneuver them into the kiln is also quite a task. And I did have the kiln load planned to the T when in the first initial weeks, but on that day, when you're loading the kiln, there are their own challenges that come with it. So initially, I had a different layout for it, but then as few hours passed by, and then when I started loading the front stack, I realized that I need to make some changes. Otherwise, it's not fitting. Like all the pieces won't go in the kiln. So the afternoon was again spent unloading it and again reloading it. And this was how the final loading happened. Just zooming in for you to see the back of the kin. So back of the kin had all these taller pieces, and at the very bottom, the two leaf compositions that I'd made. And zooming in on the right. So what I realized is that although I had sort of jotted down the dimensions that I would love to make, and I stuck to those, what I didn't check is that are there posts that could support and suit the heights that I'm making the pieces in. And to the right, the bottom shelf that you see uh, was quite a gamble that I ended up taking, where you can see there's a post on top of a post, and then there's a shelf on top of it. Now we'd gone through different arrangements and we tried loading the top shelf in the bottom and vice versa, but somehow there was no other resort left, and I had to take this route forward. The other thing was that the cones were going to come in two places here. So the bottom cones were at the bottom right shelf, and the top cone was on the left side front shelf. It was placed on a brick, so it fit the height of the peephole and everything. Now, when Suraj had fired, it's a fast fire Olsen kin. So usually when I've seen firings in GBP, they go on for more than 24 hours at times, whereas this can be wrapped up within 8 to 12 hours, depending on how fast you want it to go. So I thought that with my firing, I'll do more reduction, and I went slow with the firing in the sense that I started on a Friday, 3 days before the open day studio, and started at 7 in the morning and gradually took it up. And I did clay body reduction and then at the end a glaze as well. When you want to stoke in the kin, it's quite different versus the kins in GBP because you literally need to throw the logs of wood, and that was a little different than how I'm usually used to stoking the kin. Uh, Quite a load for one arm. And in the left image, you can see the peepholes where they are. So the firing post 1100 degrees, I would say it was getting, as in the thermocouple reading of 1100 or 1050 onwards, it was sort of difficult to get it up to make it rise to the temperature. But uh, I mean, I was struggling for it, and uh, I just wanted to check if at least if the cone 8 is soft or it's down, and or cone 9 is soft or not. Because the actual temperature in the kin varies versus what it shows in the pyrometer reading. And when I took out the top peephole to see if the cones are soft, I couldn't see the cone. So then I had Suraj come in and also see if he could see the cones, and he also couldn't, which meant that the cones had gone somewhere else, like they were not where they were supposed to be. And then I thought, okay, I'll check in the bottom peephole at least what temperature is being indicated. And when I saw the bottom cones, I could see that cone 8 is soft, but behind the cones, I could see that there's posts that have fallen, and the piece that was placed there, the snake piece, fragments of it were also there on the shelf. And then it dawned on me, okay, that things have really shaken up here, and the bottom two shells are completely gone. Uh, so I went back home not feeling, I mean, I went back home feeling quite disheartened, and I was just thinking that what's going to happen now when I unload the kin and the open studio is just like now. And uh, the day before the open studio, when we opened the kin, sadly, I don't have a picture of it because, I mean, this door, once you open it, there are also bricks lined up to close the kin. And as we started taking off the top layer, uh, with few peaks, you could see that the shells had fallen inwards on top of each other. Also, the pieces had fallen on top of each other and they were leaning against the brick door. So then that meant that I had to take off one layer of bricks at a time and then also remove the pieces at the same time. Uh, so with everything out of the cane, showing you the first broken images, the snake piece was completely gone and completely broken. And parts of the leaf forms, they had come off, they had chipped, and uh, yeah, they were also broken. Now coming to the good pieces that came out of the kin. So the first leaf forms that I'd worked with, these fired well, although with this one, I wouldn't say I was quite pleased with the Neriage effect because, of course, I did a lot of reduction and the clay body just turned toasty. And the one to the right came quite intact. It was on the top front shells, and although it had leaned over, I just had one leaf coming off of it. To the left, because this piece had fallen onto its left side, the shoot also kind of leaned onto the left. It didn't stick to the edge though, it was still hovering. But you can see with the heat and the firing, I mean, how much it moved because of the flow of the ash as well. And then in this piece, after putting the different components of it, like the leaves on top of it and everything, This fired piece came out as a completely different story. To me now it looks like the boy and the monkey are stuck in some tornado where the palms are really shaking, and they're just holding on to their dear life so that they don't fall onto the floor. So the palms here also kind of just converged into each other, and the composition completely changed itself. But overall, I think it still looks one, and like I wouldn't say. I mean, I expected the worst, but I was pleasantly surprised that it's still standing. Like the palm trees hadn't completely broken off and fallen onto the shelf. Uh, in exchange for the resources that we were availed at the ceramic center, we ceramic center was going to pick up two pieces of ours, and to the left that you see the frog piece was the one that ceramic center kept with them. I feel overall I was uh, not happy with how the glazing of the frogs was done, but the spray gun on the leaves, it I think that came out well. And the monkey piece here, I think I was happiest with this one. It was quite spontaneous when I'd made it, and even in firing, I felt it came out. Although it had fallen onto the shelf, it still came out intact, and it looked good. So I made two of these leaf compositions, and the one to the right is the second piece that Ceramic Center picked up. And here you could see the reduction that had happened because I used a green slip which has turned pink in places. It was quite, I would say, like I felt the reduction effect on this piece a lot more, I'd say. And this is on in preparation for the open day studio. Uh, So we had all the tables arranged and our works placed for everybody to come and see it. And Ceramic Center is quite huge in that sense. So here in the back, just to show you that they have about four different size gas firings, gas skins, and to the left is the wood kiln. Just another image of us, I mean, of our display. And this to the left, you see Jyoti sir, and with him is Jyoti Ben, who's the founder of Ceramic Center. So they are just looking at my piece, and like it was nice to interact with them and have hear what they had to say about the works as well. There were also other different artists who would come to see. And to the right, a group picture again with Suraj, Kanjan, Jyoti sir, me, uh, Jyoti Ben, and her daughter Reshma Ben, who's also looking after Ceramic Center. Yeah, so this is my experience of the 8 weeks that I spent there. I'm handing it over to you, Suraj.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruddhi. There will be questions post Suraj's presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. Suraj, you can start sharing. आप screen share करना शुरू कर दीजिए.
Okay.
Suraj is the other recipient of ICAF residency. Just to give a brief of him, Suraj Kumar Sahu was born in 1995 in Soroda, Odisha. He completed his BFA in sculpture from BK College of Art and Craft, BBSR, Odisha, in 2019. He completed his MFA in sculpture at the MSU Vadodara in 2023. He represents Indian temple architecture through his art using stone, clay, and natural elements. Over to you, Suraj. Unmute कीजिए.
Thank you.
जी.
Am I visible?
हाँ. Yes, you are.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Hello everyone. Good evening. और अपना रेसिडेंसी का जो भी प्रोसेस था, मतलब कैसे स्टार्ट, ऑलरेडी रुधि ने तो उसका जो प्रोसेस है काफ़ी शेयर कर चुके हैं। और यहाँ पे जो मेरा कॉलेज कंप्लीट हुआ मास्टर्स 2023 जुलाई में, देन 3 मंथ के बाद अगस्त में ये रेसिडेंसी मेरा स्टार्ट हुआ था। उसी टाइम पे एक्चुअली मैंने मास्टर में कुछ टेराकोटा में काम किया, लेकिन सेरामिक इसमें ग्लेज और स्टेन ये सब यूज करना मेरे लिए कम्प्लीटली डिफरेंट नया एक्सपीरियंस लेना था, तो मेरे लिए काफ़ी टॉप था। थैंकफुल कि मेरे साथ रुद्धि थे और उधर देवेश स्टूडियो में हैंडल कर रहे थे, तो मुझे काफ़ी हेल्पफुल रहा। जैसे कि स्टार्टिंग डे में फाल्गुनी और खंजन सर ने आके जो हम लोग को गाइडेंस दिए, जैसे कैसे काम करना है, कैसे मटेरियल को हैंडल करना है, ये सब बारे में काफ़ी क्लैरिटी दे दिए थे। देन स्टेप बाय स्टेप हम लोगों ने, जैसे रुद्धि को सेरामिक को ले काफ़ी एक्सपीरियंस है, उन्होंने स्टार्ट डे से, मतलब स्टार्टिंग से ही उन्होंने प्लानिंग कर चुके थे कि कब फायरिंग होगा, कितना फायरिंग होगा। ये मेरे लिए कम्प्लीटली नया था, क्योंकि मुझे ओवरऑल आइडिया नहीं था, मतलब ये टाइम पीरियड के हिसाब से सेरामिक में जाना है। इससे पहले मैंने सेरामिक को लेकर कहीं पे उतना एक्सप्लोर नहीं किया था, सिंपल मैंने टेराकोटा में ही किया था। देन ये मेरे लिए काफ़ी अच्छा रहा, तो वो प्रोसेस में मैंने कुछ काम करने का ट्राई किया। जैसे मैंने ह्यूमन फिगर और आर्किटेक्चर को मर्ज करके, ये मेरा काम है। फर्स्ट काम में मैंने एक यूनिटी है और ऊपर केव का फील दिया है। जैसे एक एक जेनरेशन, एक आर्किटेक्चर को बनाने में पूरे जेनरेशन चला जाते हैं, उनका जो यूनिटी को दिखाने का ट्राई किया है। ये एक किंग का टॉर्सो मैंने बनाया था। जैसे कि मैंने यहाँ पे किंग की टॉर्सो, लेकिन किसी पर्टिकुलर किंग का फेस को मैंने डिपेक्ट नहीं किया, इसलिए कि मैंने ओवरऑल पूरे किंग को देखना चाहता था। जैसे कि एक किंग का सोच होता है, मुझे इतना बड़ा महल बनाना है, और उसके ऊपर मैंने पहाड़ पत्थर का एक फॉर्म देने का ट्राई किया। वो पत्थर, मतलब पहाड़ को काट के उसके अंदर टेम्पल आर्किटेक्चर केव्स का जो फॉर्म है वो देने का ट्राई किया। देन रेसिडेंसी के चलने के टाइम में बीच में वहाँ का जो आर्टिस्ट थे, काफ़ी सीनियर आर्टिस्ट है, ज्योति सर और वहाँ का लोकल आर्टिस्ट, सब लोग एक दिन गेट टुगेदर हुए थे, और ये सेरामिक को लेकर कैसे आगे जा सकते हैं और कैसे इसको हैंडल करना है, उसके ऊपर काफ़ी अच्छा डिस्कशन रहा। उसे कुछ इमेजेस है। और रुधि ने ये पूरे प्लान करके, रुधि जैसे कि फायरिंग कब होगा, मेरा कब होगा, उनका कब होगा, देन इस सेट ग्लेज और स्लीप का जो प्रोसेस है, वो काफ़ी सारा बुक रीड करके, और उसको बनाने का, उस कैसे ग्लेज बनाना है, स्लीप बनाना है, उसके बारे में मुझे ओवरऑली काफ़ी आइडिया दिए थे। उसके से हम लोग काफ़ी डेवलप किए हैं। ये 20 फायरिंग का लोडिंग था।
क्रेजी बनाता है, मैंने इसका काम देखा है, इसका इंस्टा पे भी देखना तो।
देन ये ग्लेज जो फायरिंग हो गया था उसके बाद, और ये रेसिडेंसी के ड्यूरिंग में मेरा एक ग्रुप एग्जीबिशन था कॉलेज में, तो हम लोग सब कुछ एक्टिविटी होता तो मिल के जाके उसको एक्सप्लोर कर रहे थे बड़ौदा में भी। देन ये मेरा फाइनल वर्क था जब फायरिंग के बाद। ब्रोकन आर्म फॉर्म्स, उसमें काफ़ी केव और आर्किटेक्चर को मैंने प्रोमिनेट करने का ट्राई किया हूँ। ये एक फॉर्म था कि जैसे ह्यूमन फिगर और आर्किटेक्चर का जो रिलेशनशिप है, जैसे टेम्पल में भी बेस होता है, अमालिका होता है, जंगी होता है, ये सब स्टेप बाय स्टेप होता है। जैसे मुझे लगा कि ये जो आर्किटेक्चर है एक ह्यूमन को एक फ्रीडम देता है, तो उसी को लेकर मैंने काम किया था। ये भी उसी सीरीज का ही। ये मैंने पोटेंशियल को लेकर काम किया था। और मेरे लिए ग्लेज अप्लाई करना ये सब मेरे लिए कंप्लीटली नया था। बैलेंस को लेके किया था। ये भी आर्किटेक्चर और एनिमल को लेके।
ओके, बहुत बढ़िया, बहुत ही बढ़िया काम।
थैंक यू।
If anyone has any questions, you can ask them now. सूरज, आप शेयरिंग स्टॉप कर देंगे?
या
ओके। अच्छा, मेरा एक सवाल है आप दोनों से एक्चुअली। ये एक्सपीरियंस इन टर्म्स ऑफ लर्निंग, इन टर्म्स ऑफ मेकिंग कॉन्टैक्ट्स, और इन टर्म्स ऑफ एक टाइमलाइन में काम करके देना है, ये क्या लर्निंग्स थे आप लोगों के? ब्रीफली कुछ बता सकते हैं?
So the other thing with ceramic center was that they also had their timings, and the timings were 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. which which is not something that we are used to. At least I'm not in my studio, and I kind of stretch it out throughout the day and I work. So this, I felt it gave a good balance also, the 9 to 5 timing, but at the same time, like I said, in the third, fourth week, the time pressure started building on me with my pieces breaking and having that deadline of getting the works ready. It definitely pushes you. You're way more involved in those pieces for that time, and uh, yeah, it's not a situation where one voluntary goes into, right, when we are in our own studio, but when you're in someone else's space, then it's completely different. Like you have to deliver come what may.
मेरे लिए भी काफ़ी टफ था, जैसे कि 2 मंथ में इतना सारा काम करना और उसको प्रॉपर बेक करना, क्योंकि वो ड्राई होने में काफ़ी टाइम लगता है। ये प्रोसेस में मुझे काफ़ी प्लान आउट में जाना पड़ा, तो आई थिंक ये और 3 मंथ हो जाता तो काफ़ी और बेस्ट हो जाता, बट आई हैप्पी, बट अच्छे से हो पाया।
तो आप कुछ बताना चाहेंगे तो पीपल जो आगे अभी अप्लाई करना चाहते हैं इस रेसिडेंसी के लिए, तो कोई you want to give some message or you want to give some tips or whatever, anything on your mind that you would suggest for the artists who wish to apply?
एक्चुअली
One
ये
second, Suraj, Ruddhi, why don't you talk about certain things in terms of uh, what is it that, because your practices have been a bit different and you have also explored different aspects of clay when you were in your studios, and how was it different from working there to working here? यहाँ पे जो काम किया आपने वो आपको किस तरीके से अलग लगा है, या आपको फायदा हुआ है, नहीं फायदा, वो क्या, what is it that you have learned, uh, if you could explain, both of you.
So the first being that although principles of wood firing are the same, when you're working with a completely new kin, and when you're firing it, that whole firing experience over those period of few hours was completely different. And sometimes one wonders if one is going to be able to achieve that temperature that one wants. Second thing, I've had these ideas, but I didn't know that I can execute these. So the main difference was that I had chosen my theme, and then I had no distractions, which I usually do when I am at home. And I could just focus on the ideation of it and the execution of it. The other thing was the equipments that we used there. So I used a lot of slab roller over there, or the extruder. Also, the Morbi clay, when it was mixed with the stoneware clay, how it felt. And I would, I didn't know. Mainly for me, also it was nice to see that these are the kind of works that I can bring out from myself. I didn't know I could do it. So on different levels, I would say, uh, like it was a lot of discovery, is what I would say for me.
जैसे कि ये 2
Right.
मंथ की जो प्रैक्टिस था उसमें मेरे को सेरामिक एक्चुअली होता क्या है प्रॉपर मेरे को ये चीज़ के बारे में जानने को मिला। जैसे सेरामिक आर्टिस्ट कैसे सेरामिक को हैंडल करते हैं। इससे पहले मैंने सिर्फ टेराकोटा में ही काम किया था। देन ये प्रोसेस में रेसिडेंसी में मैंने ग्लेज़ का भी ट्राई किया, स्लिप का भी ट्राई किया। और ये जो रेसिडेंसी के टाइम में रुद्धि ने मुझे आईकेएफ के बारे में भी इंट्रोड्यूस किए थे। देन मैंने उसके बारे में काफ़ी एनालाइज किया तो मुझे पता चला सेरामिक का इतना बड़ा वर्ल्ड है। तो ये रेसिडेंसी के ड्यूरिंग मैंने सेरामिक का काफ़ी कुछ जानने को मुझे मिला। और सेम टाइम मुझे सेरामिक को लेके जो लोग जो सीनियर आर्टिस्ट एक्सपोज कर रहा है उसी टाइम में मैं उनके साथ बातें करने का और आइडिया शेयर करने का भी काफ़ी वहीं से ही मुझे काफ़ी एक्सपोजर मिला है। तो ये मेरे लिए बहुत हेल्पफुल आगे भी रहेगा, अभी भी वो काफ़ी हेल्प कर रहा है।
आपके लिए एक सवाल है सूरज, इन्होंने मीनाक्षी पूछ रहे हैं कि व्हाट टेम्परेचर डिड यू फायर टू?
1250 जब हमने गैस गैस में 900 तक लेके गए थे 20, देन ग्लेस फायरिंग में 1250 तक लेके गए थे।
And these are really large pieces, so how difficult was it to put it all together? बहुत बड़े पीसेस होने की वजह से कैसे इतने जोड़ के वो किया?
एक्चुअली काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग भी था और इसको हैंडल करना, जैसे ड्राई भी हो रहा है तो कितना फ्रेजाइल हो जाता है, तो उसके हिसाब से भी काम करना, ये चीज़ मेरे को वो सीखने को मिला। तो ज़्यादा जैसे कि रुद्धि का काम बहुत ही पतला था, उसको कैसे वो हैंडल कर रहा था, एकदम बच्चे के जैसे वो उठा के लेके कील के अंदर उसको प्लेसमेंट करना, ये चीज़ तो मेरे लिए कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट था। इससे पहले मैंने इतना फ्रेजाइल काम भी उतना हैंडल भी नहीं किया था और उसी ड्यूरिंग ड्यूरिंग में रेसिडेंसी के टाइम में भी ये सब चीज़ें जानने को सीखने को मिला।
Anything from you, Ruddhi?
मैं एक चीज
Yeah, I
शेयर
think
करना चाहती हूँ कि सूरज को रिसेंटली जिलेजन से एक बहुत अच्छा रेसिडेंसी मिला है, सो होपफुली ही विल एबल टू गो इन अगस्त, व्हिच इज fully funded residency from जिलेजन इंटरनेशनल स्टूडियो, एंड ही विल बी वर्किंग देयर फॉर 3 months। तो तब काफी सारा और भी बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिलेगा सूरज, तो अच्छा रहेगा आपके लिए। हाँ,
थैंक यू सो मच।
Yeah, Ruddhi was saying something.
wait, there were two questions. You had asked something, and then someone else had also asked.
Yeah, so there are such large pieces. How difficult was it to put it all together? And again, the firing temperature. And I have a question. Did you see any wood firing while you were doing your work, or it was like your final firing was the only wood firing you saw and did?
Yeah, so Suraj did his wood firing first because I needed a little bit more time to finish my load of glaze firing. Suraj gladly volunteered to do his first firing. So it was his loading that I experienced, and then the firing, and when he's unloaded, all of that. With the big pieces, I would say a lot of things that I had to mindfully think about was the first uh, shoots that I spoke about, when that I had to make sure that they could balance themselves and they didn't topple over. So it's not like you just start making big things. Simultaneously, it occurs to you that this is something that you have to think about. Then again, with that monkey and boy piece, I kind of went through the process of what all can go wrong when you're in your first attempt. So uh, then when I've made that sort of a piece, uh, before it is completely bone dry, it's wise to shift that piece in the leather hard stage onto the shelf itself, so that then you just have to lift the shelf and then load it into the kiln. Like these little things, then intuitively you start to figure out, I would say. Wood firing with such big pieces, because usually with functional works you have a lot of shells stacked on top of each other. With the momentum of the heat and everything, and if the works have narrow bases, then they definitely are going to kind of sway in the kiln. This is not something that I knew. A lot of uh, like in the bone dry stages and the bisque firing stages, whatever was vertical at 90 degrees definitely tweaked and sort of fell onto each other, because one pot had kind of leaned onto the other piece, and that's why that leaned a lot more. So the main learning lesson for me in this was loading the kiln, especially a wood fired kiln, and making sure you have the correct measurements of the props, so later on there's no unnecessary adventure while firing.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Anyone?
Also, I want to say that after residency, सूरज एंड रुद्धि का शो भी हुआ था at Kanole Arts Center Gallery. I think last September, yeah, October में था वो, along with few other ICAF members. So that was also, I think, good experience for them.
Okay. So I think that's it.
Kshitija, conclude please with the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you, Ruddhi and Suraj. That was a wonderful presentation, and we look forward for more works. And all the very best, Suraj, for your upcoming residency. And we will be, for all the ICAF members, we will be having another presentation in now next month. So we'll keep you updated. And yeah, have a good summer ahead. Okay.
Thank you all,
Thank you all.
Kshitija, Ruddhi,
Yeah.
Suraj. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.